Oh, greetings and welcome to this 23rd of June 2024. Still the third decade of the 21st century. I always open with that if you're new to my channel so that I can highlight the fact that if you're paying attention, we're actually in the third decade of the 21st century. And some really wise people had once predicted where we would be as a race of beings and what sort of things we'd be dealing with. And I always like to hyper focus on that to say, like, what are we actually dealing with as opposed to where people thought we would be? Really educated people thought we'd be dealing with this stuff. Instead, this is what we're dealing with. Okay. Second part, if you're new to my channel, if you leave a comment, I promise to read, react, and respond. Lately, I've had a lot of comments, usually by the same person, no big deal. So it takes up most of my time since I try to do 20-minute videos. But I made a promise. You leave a comment, I will read, react, and respond. Now, one thing I had to do with my last video is I had to break things up. So some of the comments had to do with more geekier, nerdier stuff, so I intend to respond to that on my geekier, nerdier channel. So this one is more socio-politically related, and I'm not really sure what the hell I'm doing with my hand, but I'm not even Italian. I've got the ancestry DNA to prove it. Alright, let's get into it. Stace, 7 days ago, Home Depot question made me think of the Equalizer movie. So I replied, what question do you have about the old Home Depot, friend? And you replied, no, the question someone asked you while working at Home Depot reminded me of what Denzel actually did. So we so need more content on the Geekier channel. I'm working on it. I got to get through this stuff first. I didn't understand what you were trying to say at first. Now I do. No, I'm not quite Denzel level Equalizer. That's not me, but yeah, it was really only about two people that were just, I don't know. This one girl I worked with, you could just tell that she was a train wreck chasing down a dumpster fire. She was just a hot friggin' mess. So she always tried to find ways to distract from her problems, you know, like accusing other people of stuff. It's an unfortunate world we live in, but there are people that have found a way to create currency out of being a victim and leverage that victim status. It's sad, but it is what it is. And then, not one to be at a loss for words, Andra Book. Happy Father's Day. Thank you very much. It was a rough day for me. The loss of my son really hit me hard that day. Wish I could tell you why. It just did. You know, the fact that ever since October, let me do the math, I want to say October 18th of 2022, my son's been gone longer than he was ever with us. So my son, when he died March 7th of 2015, he was 7 years, 7 months, and 11 days old. So that day hit me pretty hard, and ever since then it's been pretty hard. Then Andra, you said, did you eventually find the whole bear story? I did. It turns out the original comment was saved in my email. So my Gmail account usually gets a notification, or I get an email on my Gmail account when I get a response, and I was able to save it somehow in my Gmail. So I got the whole thing, and I think I read it out loud. Andra, again, I think it cut off my comment again. The toxic people was related to my first comment, the one I replied to. Just wanted to clarify that while I'm sure toxic people do exist, I don't like the trend of tying it to the color and referring to people as toxic white males or to the women as Karens. I find this cultural trend stupid because it normalizes bullying based on traits people cannot change. It was not based on anything you said, really. It was just in general. You know, and that's very true. Unfortunately, I will say that sometimes stereotypes exist, and as much as we may not like the term stereotypes, they exist for a reason, up to and including because people go out of their way to conform to that stereotype. Now, as a heterosexual Caucasian male, I'm sure I could point out some stereotypes about heterosexual Caucasian males, heterosexual Caucasian women, or any other kind of person. as long as I stay within the heterosexual Caucasian, I'm okay. But the moment I venture out of that, I'm instantly a racist, because that is the third decade of the 21st century. But no, I think Karens exist because women go out of their way to be Karens. And you're not wrong. I despise this concept of, you know, because you're Caucasian, white, whatever, or male or whatever, you're automatically evil by default. Full disclosure, my wife's out of town visiting her dad, so I may have to pause this video multiple times to respond to her. So if you hear the diddle-link, which is probably going to go off here in a minute, yeah, I don't like this trend right now where because you're a white male, you're the epitome of all evil. I don't know, it seems kind of redundant, lazy. So, all right, Andra, what else you got? Hang on. All right, Andra, what else we got here? Yeah, exactly. The jocks tend to be the people who do enlist. So there's a bit of a common pool of people there which seem to have acquired a bit of a target on their back in recent years. Before I go any further, typically speaking, the ones that are relatively athletically gifted but didn't go on to college or whatnot, they tend to migrate towards like the special forces type stuff. That's not 100% accurate, but if you're genetically gifted to be athletic, then you're more than likely going to be more suitable for special ops, since the tryouts and the assessments and these selections and whatnot tend to be very physically demanding, which is not just power of the mind. It does take a lot of willpower, but your body also has to be able to keep up. I would say it's been going on for a while, but for me, I ran headfirst into this issue circa 2013, 2014, before I was blissfully unaware that this is a thing at all. I had athletic scholarships though, and academic ones. Some of the people I knew were in the crosshairs, had the same too. They knew people in the Olympics too. We were all kind of part of the group of people who typically overachieved in different ways. They were maybe interested in military, but also other stuff, right? Like it was not, oh, he's a known criminal, where nowhere near that threshold. So that's why I feel like it is just primarily about bullying the next generation of potential leaders, let's say. Like there's a group of people who normally would be seen as top dogs, basically, who suddenly have a target on their backs due to some cultural trends. Even though they were not responsible for the issues those cultural trends are stemming from, if there is a grain of truth to every story, these people personally did not participate in any of that, but they kind of look like maybe they would be leaning that way in the future. So they get a lot of shit preventatively, and it does not seem to be targeted at both men and women. They're just doing it in different ways. The women are Karens, the men are toxic males, and they try to play men versus women too. They tell the guys one thing, the girls another thing, and then they sit back and try to enjoy the spectacle, basically. Andra, if I'm tracking correctly, and I'm not saying I am, and you feel free to correct me because I'm sure you will. It seems like one of the big trends we have going on right now that is awkward at best is, so if you don't have the genetics for like a fast metabolism, muscle building, fat burning, so you're just naturally overweight, or you're not naturally pretty, if you're not all these things that were essentially part of just normal everyday society. Some people are pretty, some people are not. Some people are attractive, some people are not. Some people have amazing genetics. They don't have to work very hard to get lean, to get fit, to look great, to look amazing. Some of us have to try really, really hard. I've lost right at around 60 pounds since the beginning of the year. I'm down to 205, down from 265. I mean, and you know, I'm not that great. I mean, I look better naked, and I hope my wife enjoys it, but it seems like we're trying to overemphasize this group of people that felt marginalized for many different reasons, some of which is their own fault. If you don't live right, if you don't take care of yourself, things will happen. You'll become obese. I don't know. I think we're on the same page. I don't like where these trends are going. It's just kind of stupid. So it is important for people to really understand to not listen to random rumors or any of these manipulation attempts at all. And I would say that's important on both sides, because I can say I won't listen to stupid rumors, but if the guy's side of the equation does not get it, then the rumors still work on some level. Or if the guys get it but the women don't, and they end up being more suggestible, then that can be a problem too. I just watched a clip of another channel where the conversation turned into, oh, you know, she was a Caucasian chick and you know how they are, as if to say they're all crazy Karens. We are seeing more and more of this trend in politics, this trend to politicize relationships between people in messed up ways, to the point that people start to think that it's okay now to refer to others based primarily on skin tone, and in a very negative light too. Can't disagree with anything you're saying. The problem is, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, smells like a duck, so on and so forth, it's probably a duck. However, if you're a relatively educated person, you know that there are several different species of mallard. My point being is, as I said before, some people either actively participate in being a stereotype or go out of their way to fulfill every virtue of a stereotype, or some people unknowingly are just part of a stereotype. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. There's times during the winter, like when my family and I'll just be kind of like sitting there waking up, you know, having our morning wake up, and we'll be watching like ridiculousness on repeat on MTV, and it's just these random videos. And half the time when I see some stupid shit, it tends to be the same thing where even myself, I start shaking my head going, fucking white people. It's just is what it is. So you go on to say, and if they can not pick on skin tone, they will find something else to pick on. Very true. I was at a festival a few years ago, and a random person I never met before walked up to me and asked me where my relatives were originally from, aka what is my genetic lineage, and then tried to prove to me that we were responsible for atrocities committed during the last World War. He was super bad at geography and ended up being 100% wrong, but he did try. That was just his first attempt at his first attempt as soon as he saw me. That was the opener. He decided to approach me with, "Hi, what's your name, and then which side of the world wars were your relatives on? Did you know you likely profited from war crimes?" I was just like, what the fuck? And tried to calmly explain that he's got the wrong person and wrong history, but who does that? It was so strange. That used to never happen. Yeah, that is an extremely odd occurrence. I mean, to me it's no different than people that are trying to beg, that are demanding reparations, who, especially like people up north. But I don't look, I'm not here to try to, you know, pick on anybody's family tree, but for people to demand reparations for something that never happened to them directly, but something that happened to possibly, maybe, kind of, sort of, in some weird way, you know, 7 or 8, you know, lineages removed to an ancestor by people that are not responsible. Because not everybody participated in slavery or anything like that. But yeah, it just a weird, yeah, that's weird. Sorry. All right. And no, it was not a historical reenactment type of event. It was a festival type event. It had nothing to do with what he was going on about at all. Like, it's gotten quite bad. That should not be something people feel comfortable randomly throwing into the conversation, since when do we blame people for crimes we believe their ancestors may have committed? Yeah. That was about 15 minutes of him trying to convince me that I was somehow complicit in ancestral genocide, and me trying to just hide behind my hot dog explain that he's got his history wrong. He literally had no clue what the battle lines even were in World War II. Like, I was seriously just there for the hot dog and popcorn they were handing out. Come on. So what, was he some Jewish kid that thought you were like some belligerent Aryan white supremacist pride Nazi? What? Sorry, Andra, you don't have to provide the context, but I feel like it might be a little necessary. I mean, that's just weird. Okay, sorry for the constant stopping. I got to respond to my wife because, well, you know, Happy wife, happy life. All right, Andra, another comment. I'm not sure what the time hack's for. Oh no, you told him that stuff? See, that is exactly the type of question you should never actually answer. Face palming hard, almost knocked myself out. Just smile and wave, you know, don't answer at all. Well, I'm sorry, Andra. All right? I mean, I was new to the civilian world. I came from a world where you could pretty much almost say anything you wanted and whatnot within reason. And, you know, responding to a question like that didn't seem completely unreasonable. But, you know, sometimes you have to live and learn. And I never once claimed to be the most intuitive person. I can be very untrusting, but I'm not saying I'm the most intuitive. And admittedly, when it happened, I was not under the impression that it was going to be meant to be used against me later, let alone considered as sexual harassment because I don't give a shit about your preference. They knew getting him fired could have had a detrimental effect. That's why they were trying to. In my humble opinion, I'm going to be super honest. I spent a lot of time and energy trying to make that situation better somehow. Most of the time, he was nicer to me than the rest of the staff were. I had more in common with him than the rest of them. He was one of the only people I had met ever at that point that I felt I could be more relaxed around most of the time. Did he say some stupid stuff once in a while that annoyed me? Yeah, but it was mainly because he seemed confused and frustrated by the overall situation. It was rare and usually a misunderstanding. I still believe it was the rumors that there were people who were actively trying to sabotage, and once in a while they would succeed a little bit in driving a wedge. But they knew 100%, they knew what they were doing, and they started doing the same thing to me because I intervened in their fucked up little game there. And that is 100% what it felt like, a game, complete with players and tasks they wanted to achieve. So, Andra, what I'll tell you is this. Tribalism, clicking, groups and whatnot, that is nothing new. We may be separated in age by, I don't know, maybe a decade or two, but that kind of shit is nothing new. What has changed in the game, all right, how games tend to evolve, right, better graphics, more options, the options of which these cliques and whatnot now have at their disposal. So this whole concept of intersectionality, the more victim points you can accrue. So if, let's say, this was a heterosexual Caucasian male, he's already starting at a deficit. And if this clique, this group of people, were anything but, then they had a lot more points in their favor. However, going back as far as I can, clicking, you know, grouping together, tribalism, that is nothing new. And they've used everything that they could. It's just now I feel like they have way more options at their disposal to leverage in order to take actions against people. And most of the time, at the very core level, they're not thinking about the consequences of their actions. They're not thinking we're just potentially destroying somebody's livelihood, because it's purely motivated by selfishness, you know, egocentrism, narcissism, you name it. As you carry on, you say they were trying on purpose to fuck shit up for him. That's what it read like to me. It was not accidental at all. That's also why I didn't tell him some of the stuff, because it seemed like they're trying on purpose to fuck up his chances and upset him. And if I don't tell him everything, maybe they won't succeed this week. It was that type of thing. I have no idea if that was the right call, though. The whole thing was super weird and at times downright scary. There were instances I'd rather not go into where things got very fucked up to the point where I was afraid to go to work some days. Yeah, I'm telling you, and I don't know if you can remember back in high school, possibly even college, like attracts like. Birds of a feather will flock together. People form groups, and if you did any kind of during any one of your electives or your gen eds, you took like sociology 101, the concept of groupthink, the concept of mob mentality, how individually smart people, individually rational people can congregate in a group, and collectively the IQ can go down because the group becomes homogenous. The group has its own thought process separate of the individual, and chaos can ensue. And the one thing I've also noticed too, going back as far as maybe even 2 decades, beginning with this particular century, was this laissez-faire attitude, kind of like this fuck it, I don't care, whatever, whatever, I do what I want to, YOLO, where it serves nothing more than egocentrism and pure narcissism. You know, fuck it, you know, I'm living my best life, whatever. It's unfortunate, but I feel like my generation, we may have done the exact same thing. However, we had a conscience and we could realize when we pushed things a little too far. Yeah. At least some of us could. The ones that couldn't. Essentially what I've noticed is the trend leans more towards sociopathology. Maybe even borderline psychopathology, where in the 21st century, even up to the third decade of the 21st century, the trends are leaning heavily towards a sense of sociopathology and psychopathology, founded on pure narcissism and egocentrism. So my attempts to smooth things over were there because typically that's a strategy that works in cases like this, but my past experience was like university cliques. It was a whole other ballgame. I tend to have strategies to deal with certain types of scenarios. This would not have been the first time I tried to make a group work more cohesively together, as opposed to being all in cliques and tribes. I promise I didn't read this before. This is fresh. Typically I'm successful, but typically there is not so much random vitriol and it is not so focused. They do it for a couple weeks maybe and then it blows over. In this case, I did not really succeed. I kind of succeeded partially with some of the people, but they were trying to get rid of me by the end. It flipped. I started off being seen very positively and they turned on me because I was trying to kind of reintegrate him into the group. It never calmed down. It was worse when he was not there, and I never got it to the place where I wanted it to get that group, where we can all work together well and not have it be so split and toxic. Things would calm down for a few days and start up again. They never stopped trying to bad talk him to me though. Even after he was gone, it continued. Let me finish reading this before I comment, because I feel like I'm hitting things that you're about to say. That's why I kind of wish he would have just stopped being quite so upfront with everybody, like triage a little bit, you know. I'm nice and smiley with everybody. No one has cause to complain, but no one knows anything about me either. Generally, I don't tell them how I feel or think or any of that stuff. I'm good at that. I wish more people understood the value in just being nice, but not letting people too close. Maybe especially not people who are nothing like you. Compartmentalizing may seem like it's too much effort, but it's the only thing that really works with some people. Reveal stuff slower maybe. Tell them a little bit and see how they react. Don't go 100% honesty all the time. The whole experience was kind of like I broke some type of cardinal rule no one told me existed. We were supposed to shit on people like him and all of us together. I was not allowed to not be a part of that. That type of thinking was just so alien to me that I did not recognize it at the time for what it was. I realized it relatively late that the vitriol had no real cause in this case. It was just random and mainly a reaction to how he expressed himself. I was used to Star Trek versus Star Wars debates, like things where if you get people from one group to talk to another group and each gives a little bit, we can all achieve a group cohesion. And then we just have a happy little group with more people with different skill sets. No one told me that at some point people decided it's time to really start fighting each other and 100% trying to destroy the other group. Oh, I really want to comment, but I'm going to finish this. And again, I'm typically nice, but there's stuff I just won't do. I won't say fuck you to their face typically, but I will just not do what they want. Basically, if there is real cause to ostracize someone, okay, name it. But some cases are just fucked up. People being fucked up, they sense blood in the water and go for it. There's no off switch anymore. I believe that is due to some people being just unstable, and tribalism is one of those things that really lets them fly their freak flags, so to speak. It's the only thing that they can engage in where it's acceptable for them to let loose all their inner random vitriol. The tribalism thing does not work if people just stand their ground and not give in to the pressure. That's something everyone should be aiming for, though, together, collectively. That workplace lost 2 of their best staff in fairly short order. Another few left afterwards. In another couple of years, they almost went bankrupt. I did not ask why because I never went back there, but I am pretty sure it was due to the toxic management style. This type of workplace culture has very negative effects. If anyone had even 5% goodwill in the case, I truly think things could have ended up differently. Even the management. Had any of them stepped in and stopped this crap, it would have been okay in the end, but no one really did. This stuff is not healthy, in my opinion. It's like a social cancer. Tribalism almost always leads to societal decline. Andra, you are not wrong. Again, I cannot tell you how grateful I was that I had the store manager at the Home Depot in Garner, North Carolina, because the fact that she was married to a Special Forces operator in the Army gave her a unique perspective on life. There was this lesbian that used to work there. I don't know if she still does or not, but she also had penis envy. She looked and dressed like a boy. You knew she was a girl. But and I don't care. I don't care that she was a lesbian. I don't care that she wanted to dress like a boy. What I cared about was how she treated me and how utterly disrespectful and condescending and patronizing she was to me. So one day my wife came to visit, and I brought my wife straight to her, and I was like, look, this is the bitch right here. This is the bitch right here. If she ever disrespects me ever again, you're going to drag her ass out in the parking lot and you're going to beat the ever-living shit out of her until somebody drags you off of her, and it's not going to be me. If she dies, she dies. And I was like, and then I looked at her and I was like, I will never put my hand on a woman. Whether you want to dress like a guy or not, I'll never put my hands on a woman. But my wife will. Quit fucking treating me like a piece of shit because you think you've got some iota of authority. And I walked off. She went and told the manager, and the manager was like, do you treat him like shit? Well, I don't think. It's like, Dan, does she treat you like shit? I was like, yes, ma'am, she does. I was like, and you said your wife would beat her ass? And I was like, yes, ma'am. I was like, well, you know, you're not supposed to threaten that kind of stuff here. And I was like, ma'am, I apologize. The situation reached that ultimate conclusion. And I was like, you talk to your husband, you ask him what it's like to get backed into a corner and how you're supposed to react. And here's what I'll say. We have an entire, whether it's a generation, a trend, whatever you want to call it, of what Mike Tyson says, people who have gotten away with too much without getting punched in the face. Chris Kyle, whether he was a good person, bad person, you know, there's a lot of speculation out there. Chris Kyle had a quote that said, in spite of what your mama told you, violence does solve things, and he's not wrong. All right, if violence didn't work, we wouldn't have police. If violence didn't work, we wouldn't have the military. Violence sometimes teaches people a lesson. Pain oftentimes teaches people a lesson. And here's what I will say. Businesses like that suffer those consequences of that toxic tribalism. The people that are responsible for the toxic tribalism need to suffer the consequences of their actions, perhaps to include with some pain. And the problem is, I think that's where we're heading, is because as a society, we never correct things like when you skid on ice, you make small minor corrections. We always go full retard in the other direction. So what scares me is we're going to have a trend of people like me that go out on bashing parties looking for people like this, the toxic tribalism, to just beat the crap out of. And I'll be completely honest, depending on how bad it gets, I would probably be somebody that would participate. However, that's why I also removed myself from the situation. I moved from the Raleigh area to the area I live in now, where I'm milquetoast. I'm a wallflower. I blend in. I'm less than exceptional. I'm just a regular veteran here in this community, and I love it. All right, so you got another comment here from 6 days ago. That's rough with the sexual harassment thing. I can only say that, again, yes, things have gotten nuts. I've had the opposite happen, though, where people were groping staff on purpose at work, and if you tried to complain, they would refuse to write down the complaint and just fire the staff instead. So they basically feel entitled to assault people and think that as long as they don't write it down, it's like it never happened. They're just fighting against Me Too. That's why it's all the females' fault. You see, because harassment was not forbidden prior to Me Too. That's BS. It's just easier to fire the young female employee instead of telling the guys to keep their hands to themselves. So to me, once again, neither extreme is good. Both extremes actually hurt regular people. I want to be able to go to work and not have to worry about assault. I'm sure you want to be able to go to work and not worry about people firing you because they're afraid of what might happen if they don't. Well, Andra, you're assuming I'm doing something here. Come on. These extremes help no one. You could probably try to sue them for wrongful dismissal. I could technically try that too if the assault happens to me, but neither of us could afford the attorney fees without the job, right? So I got to stop right there real quick, Andra. I was never terminated. I was removed from that position, retained by the overall company. So G4S was a company that provided individual contracts to individual companies. I was removed from one contract, but because I was not necessarily guilty of anything, I was retained by the company. I was removed from that contract for fear of retribution, whether I retributed or they retributed. And if there was another allegation, but this time it was substantiated and it was true, then they could be held liable. A different set of eyes, almost 9 years later, I can see it. Back then, it was very personal. I was also going through a lot of stuff too. I just lost my son. It's like, you know, can shit just slow the fuck down for a bit? So this happened to you while you were relatively older too. Imagine being on the other side of this and it's happening right in your 20s and you have nothing. There's no savings, nothing to fall back on, and you're just assaulted and fired in a week from a job you were barely at for 2 weeks prior. I may have been in my late 30s, but due to my son's medical situation, I didn't have any savings. I didn't have a fallback plan. My retirement was not the golden parachute that everybody thinks it is when you retire from the military. Depending on your situation, you get a stipend for housing. That's tax-free. You get a stipend for food. That's tax-free. That is significant, all right, when you're doing your financial planning. When I retired, I only got 50% of my basic paycheck, not 50% plus my stipend for housing and plus my stipend for food. So yeah, retirement was not the golden parachute. It would be kind of like you joining the military and you're barely there for 2.5 weeks and the CO decides to try to rape you, let's say, and you get away with it, but he tells his buddy up the chain of command and they fire you by the end of the week to make sure you cannot file a report. And if you try to report it, they pretend you never tried to report it at all and just fire you instead. Oh, and if you do try to report it to anyone, they can also try to sue you for trying to report it and causing them reputational damage. How would you feel? Andra, in the military it wouldn't work like that because first of all, for the first 2.5 weeks, you're going to be in some sort of basic entry-level training. All right? Everybody else has roughly 8 weeks. We have 13. So you're going to be in some level of basic level training where the only person that could try to rape you would be a fellow recruit. All right? Whether that's Army, Air Force, Navy, Space Force, Marines. Other than that, you're talking about after that you have to go to combat training for 4 weeks. So again, either a fellow student or instructor. After that, you have to go to your school to learn your job. So again, fellow student, fellow instructor, or because you might get time off now, somebody else in the service. Allegations of that sort of thing are handled very, very seriously, especially if an officer is involved. Officers do tend to protect themselves quite a bit because they want to protect the legacy of an officer, not the individual officer, but the rank of officer. But those allegations are taken quite serious in the military. And the cherry on top is then people are sitting around just going like, how do you feel about that? You should go and get therapy and talk about your feelings. I don't give a single shit to unpack anything. Like, I don't need assistance communicating my feelings right now. I need a fucking job and possibly justice, if that's not too much to ask for. Also, you couldn't get fired from the military. You can get admins separated from the military for failure to adapt or other things, and it would have to go relatively high up the food chain. You could get hardship discharge because of what happened. So if, first and foremost, if you actually were raped, the allegation would be taken seriously. NCIS and CID would get involved immediately, do a rape kit, and if the rape kit came back positive, then it would come down to basically what happens next. Charges being filed, courts martial, what have you, where then it has to get proven that, you know, it wasn't consensual. A little bit different, but I see what you're saying. I mean, maybe you misspoke and went a little too extreme with the rape, but the harassment thing is a completely different story. And harassment is still taken seriously, and the military does have methods in place for you to anonymously report that kind of stuff. All right, but you're too busy trying to, real quick, unless you get admin separated, which means you don't complete your contract, you would basically complete your contract, and if nothing else, they would try to remove you from that command and send you somewhere else and try to keep it hush-hush as far as your stuff, so that you're not carrying baggage with you and you're allowed to start anew. But you're too busy trying to afford food and this month, and you don't have a chance in hell to sue anyone, and they know that. You know that, you know they know that, and they know you know that too. So extremes bad. Clarify and facts and specifics good. They all need to stop assuming they know shit they were not there for, and stop trying to take advantage of this moment to just be pigs to people. Basically, it's okay to just give people warnings too. If it's just about verbal stuff and phrasing things in an insensitive way, people are not all socialized the same way. It's okay to train them first and not just assume they would know this stuff, especially if it was just between the two of you and someone misspoke. That's fine. But like, if you're going in a room full of people and saying, yo, stop trying to do your job like a lesbo, that I would say crosses a line there, because immediately everyone else would react to that and start giving that person crap. It would create a poor environment. A good rule of thumb is to see the individual, not their category, and address the individual, not the category. But it happens to everyone. It's not just hetero guys. It's happening to whoever is easy picking, basically. Andra, what I will say is this: I could give a shit about her being a lesbian. Sorry, you got that word stuck on me. I thought she was a solid performer. I thought she was an actual solid performer. So when something happened that was kind of out of character, I addressed it. What I think happened was she thought things were going a little bit farther than just me talking to her. So she decided to act and get her friends to act to try to make me disreputable, so that if I made things more formal, my reputation was damaged, so that my claim to her misconduct wouldn't be valid. The problem is I was not doing things in a formal nature. I was doing things like, look, this is your first thing that I've noticed, so I'm just addressing it like in the handbook. The handbook's, you know, whatever. So I think it was a matter of her trying to strike first to make me disreputable. I don't know that they were trying to fire me. I don't know that they were trying to get me removed. I think they were just trying to damage my reputation, so that if I did document it, it would be deemed as incredible, because I was not credible based on those allegations. I don't think they realized that they struck gold with the sexual harassment thing. I don't think, knowing these people like I do, I don't think they were smart enough to figure that out. I think it was just one of those things like you do a quick pick with the lottery and you win the Powerball. You know, just holy crap. I had a gay boss in a predominantly female team a few years ago show up after cutting all our hours and make jokes about how maybe we could earn more if we just turned into strippers or hookers. He's got friends who did that, so we totally could too. There's a lot more social acceptance for it nowadays. Yay, female empowerment. Like, he was trying to sell it as an empowerment thing when we were all terrified we couldn't pay rent that month. I had to eat at the food bank that month. So what do I complain about, and how do I pay the lawyers for the so-called harassment lawsuit? I can prove it, but how do I afford the lawsuit exactly? Or am I just not allowed to because he was gay, and so it could not possibly qualify as sexual harassment? Food for thought. Yeah, no, and you know what? I honestly think that there's this whole thing too where people are trying to claim their victim status as a get out of jail free card for misconduct. Okay, so he's gay. Doesn't mean he gets to, you know, misconduct himself just because he's gay. You know, and I think there's a trend in that too, where, well, you know, so I'm gay and trans and whatnot, so I have the freedom to act like a fucking piece of shit. So my message to Eric is unconnected with the Jocko drama. I specifically mentioned that I don't know Jocko personally. Never said you did. and I'm trying to avoid any drama altogether. Same here. I just need help with the business stuff because he said he knows a lot of other people who do business type of assistance and or consulting for businesses, similar to what Jocko's company does, but better basically. Like where Jocko's group is maybe not 100% serious, there are better companies out there which are also run by veterans and can help where Jocko cannot help. I'd reached out to Jocko's group in the past for business stuff, specifically for innovation products, and they seemed pretty confused for a long time, and then eventually, after many months of putting me on hold, they said they cannot help me. So I'm interested in what other companies are out there, and Eric mentioned other companies. I'm worried my messages are getting buried under a sea of internet drama. If he cannot help me, that's fine, but maybe other companies can. I just don't know how to find them. I only found Jocko because he was super visible online. Like I got lucky basically to stumble upon his business leadership thing. I really need a resource who can answer questions about developing the patents, how to engage with the DoD or whichever department handles this stuff, and also fundraising and so on. There's a lot of options and it's a maze. It's just a list of questions really, which need to be answered, and possibly assistance with the fundraising, depending on whether that's something they can help with. I see plenty of companies doing online fundraising though, so it could not be super hard to add my own projects to that, like Kickstarter. I'm just not actually online like you guys are. I don't know that I'd put myself anywhere in the same vein as like Jocko or whatnot. But thank you. And if possible, I'd like to not be in the future. I already need to have a lot of personal information online and accessible if I want to be involved with patents. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but it is very true. Like people can look up any patents I may hold and a ton of personal information is attached to it already. I feel a strong need to compartmentalize the information I put out there. Otherwise, everything about me will end up being open, and we're still in a time where fraud and cyber attacks have really gone up. The best way to keep a relatively low profile is to attach myself to a network of people who are already in this area of expertise and business domain, and then I can just be one of many. I won't stand out that way. Oh, okay. I really don't like the drama going on with Jocko's group. It's totally eclipsing everything else. I just needed assistance with projects and the business stuff. That's why I was on the Jocko podcast to begin with, and it's just been one drama after another for years. It's very distracting and annoying. We don't need to be best buds and know everything about each other and mind meld like Spock. It's fine. I just need some assistance learning the military ropes, that's all. I don't like the exaggerated emphasis on feelings and personal stories with Jocko's leadership company. Seems to be focusing on so much either. I don't think they want to do the type of work I'm actually interested in, and they drag it out forever. Like you almost never get a clear answer, and I definitely never get the assistance I need. It's like a weekend retreat where we're all supposed to do endless emotional openness exercises which never lead anywhere. I write a lot, but I don't actually share a lot of personal information online. I was already way more talkative than normal, trying to somehow connect with resources across the internet and a whole minefield of tech issues. Enough has to be enough at some point. I prefer facts and clear to-do lists and action plans. They don't want to do any of that, and Jocko does not give a damn to answer to any inquiry unless I start sounding mad and then he answers with a non-answer. It's stupid. I honestly believe that all he wants to do is pretend he might be able to help so people sign up, and then he does literally less than nothing to actually help, and that's if I can even get through to them, because most of the time their website won't load. It's just very freaking dumb and frustrating. This is not something which should have taken years for people to respond to. Typically, I get an answer to inquiries within a week. It's not 5 months, 5 years of people talking in circles and saying nothing and just kicking the can down the road. That's very disrespectful to potential clients. I don't get what his problem is in general, but there has to be other resources out there who actually want to get something done. Andra, here's what I can say. Maybe for some reason, while I'm trying to read, react, and respond, I'm missing something here. I feel like you have a very real concern to include cybersecurity concern and physical propaganda concern, like on campuses and whatnot. And I think you're right. I think you finally figured out that that's not Jocko's realm. That's not what Jocko's trying to do. I'm not saying I know what he's trying to do, but based on his online presence, I would probably say that's nowhere near what he's trying to get done. Here's what I would recommend. I know possibly 2 people that may be able to help. I'll have to reach out to them first. I'm not going to guarantee anything. I gave you Eric's contact information. If he's not getting around to you, there may be other things going on. This stuff that's going on between him and Jocko may be consuming a lot of his time, or he may not be interested. I don't know. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say my email, so you can email me directly. That way, you don't have to put your email in a comment. Email me at DPB Delta Papa Bravo 0369 at Gmail. That way I have your email address. So if these other people I may be able to put you in contact with are interested, then I now have your email so they can get in touch with you. All right? No promises though, no guarantees. All right, more comments. You do 3D printing? Hey, how much experience do you have with that? Could you maybe possibly want to help with prototyping at some point? You can totally ignore the rest of my comments. This one is the most important. Well, thank you. Let me be very clear. All right, this should be on my nerdier, geekier channel, but I'll tell you this much. The type of 3D printing I do is I take designs that are already done. I take 3D models that are already done, and I can resize them. I can do small minor manipulations, but more importantly, I do something called slicing. Slicing is when you take a 3D file and you put it on a printer. So the program will already have your printer and the print size that it's capable of doing. So then you put the model on there, and the model was designed in such a way that it either fits or it doesn't fit. So you can resize it if you want it to fit or whatnot, and you can determine thickness and whatnot. Maybe reach out to me in an email and we can maybe communicate separately. It's a little more complicated than that. I do not do 3D modeling. I'm nowhere near that level. I don't create raw items out of nothing. I basically take an existing file, put it on my 3D printers, and hopefully I got the settings correct and it prints. Okay, holy shit, 47 minutes and we're still not done. Andra, okay, more to go. Haha, you follow Dan Crenshaw and you missed all my excessive comments trying to persuade him to deal with certain topics. Wink, wink. Of course I'm familiar, but Dan thinks that everyone has it figured out because they put together a plan to make a plan at some point to deal with cybersecurity stuff in the future. I want to deal with it today. Okay, Andra, hypothetically, let's say you being a chick, me being a guy, I'm not good at subtlety. You have to literally tell me, all right? Trust me, my wife could get on here and tell you about how awkward our relationship was way back in the day because both of us were trying to do things very subtle and neither one of us were picking up on it because we both needed direct. I had no idea you were familiar with Dan Crenshaw, all right? All right. Also, he gets easily distracted by random stuff like diamond bacteria and his magical robot eye that would brain damage him if he ever had it inserted. It's just far too distracted by people lying to him on a daily basis. Basically, he has a similar problem with Jocko. Neither of them are actually proficient in most of the science and tech stuff. And they can't tell when people are just lying to their faces. So I ended up being the debunker because 90% of the information they're being told is crap. And then they just all get annoyed. Jesus. Because I can't tell them they're wrong about everything, says Jocko in sad face mode while pretending hard he had not been totally ignoring all facts and grifting like there's no tomorrow by telling different people different things and causing endless confusion. There's a long version of this comment, but I don't think it actually made it through the interweb, so I shortened it. So how about I give you the list of stuff which I think should be done to throw a wrench in the hole using campuses for fraud stuff, and you can give it to Crenshaw because, again, he might listen better when it's not me saying it and it's a fellow grunt instead. I'm going to go ahead and say Dan Crenshaw will absolutely not listen to me. I'm not in his congressional district. I'm not from Texas. I'm also not a Navy SEAL. I can almost guarantee with 100% accuracy he won't listen to me, but let's go on. We have to act relatively fast because I don't know how long we've got prior to him trying to insert robot eyes and short-circuiting his brain completely and turning into a vegetable. I tried to tell him it's BS and to stop trying for that type of stuff, but I'm pretty sure he ignored that too, along with literally everything else. The irony is inescapable, seriously. Once this stuff is all distilled into a concrete action plan and ideally executed properly, I can't stop talking about it. I really can. Like, there is an end to the tirade of information. P.S. I could totally write a longer script for a longer episode than the Jocko podcast if you guys want. I could totally make this 5 hours long. I could wear a Halloween mask head for the episodes and we could pretend I'm Sasquatch. This could be a thing we could have. We made Jocko Ugly Cry t-shirts, but make them super vague where it kind of looks like him, but not really, because he likes being super vague. I'm just saying, we could go full out on the trolling. Now, someone else write a novel, please, and prove you got better writing chops than me, if you can. Okay, I'm not against it, Andra. We'll just, we might have to flesh that out a little bit more because I don't know if so you have to understand, with my internet capability, posting an hour-long video takes almost a day. Posting a 5-hour-long video is probably going to take damn near 4.5 days. And I'm already at 51 minutes now, and I'm still not done with your comments. This video is going to take forever to upload. Okay. I tried to address this before, but I'm not sure if everyone is up to speed, so I will do a recap. Just to be clear, I've always used references in my communications about cybersecurity stuff or world events with Jocko and Crenshaw and anyone else. Most of my comments about that were public as well. Interesting, I didn't know that. With Jocko's team, I did not include personal information, but I know for a while at least his company did some tracking of who is posting what. So as far as I know, he's aware it's coming from me, even if I'm not literally stating that openly. It would be information he can access in the background. It's just not public information. There's just different levels of information there. Part of the reason I was upset at his team opening up the podcast to suspicious characters is exactly that. They do have different levels of information they collect. Not everything is public. So it is entirely possible that people with bad intentions would be interested in gaining an insider level of access. Personally, I try to keep a lot of my personal information offline because I have to try for safety reasons, and because if I do not do that and something does go wrong with my information, aka fraud stuff, I'm opening up the possibility of people blaming me for it or whoever I gave the information to. So not giving information is the best way to keep everyone or everything safe for everyone. Like the financial institutions have been trying ever since fraud has gone up to limit their own liability, and they do that by victim blaming sometimes. So I took an extreme more Catholic than the Pope stance on it, where I just refused to share any type of information that could potentially lead to that type of scenario where it can be misused. That's for everyone. No one can dox you if your data is just not in the system. That's why I'm never going to tell you where I live, even roughly. And no, it's not Toronto. Fair enough. Doesn't have to be any of my business. Typically though, general rule for everyone, I always include references. I use them when I email politicians in general, and I use the same format with Jocko's group too, just to be safe. Crenshaw, I just communicated with via YouTube. I don't think all of those communications were negative at all, but I got a strong sense that I would need to tutor him in sciences for him to gain a working knowledge of a lot of the topics he's trying to discuss. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless, and he did not seem open to listening to anything which is not part of his talking points right now. He should have let the experimental drugs crap go, especially, I cannot stand to watch that shit. I know it's going to get people killed and fucked up, and I cannot stand to be around it at all. He thinks he's got it under control, but no one can control that type of crap. The problem with Jocko is not that he's not getting the messages primarily, it's that he and his team are obfuscating on purpose. That's what it looks like to me. That impression is based on my interactions and the fact that they're saying one thing publicly and another privately. He does also seem to have some issues with messaging getting delayed or not going through, but they're also handling the messages that do get through very poorly. I can see my messages with link and references on the website. So clearly they did get through, and sometimes he answers in a way which makes it pretty clear that he did not read them. But again, he is always at least a little vague, so I know he's getting most of them, but the audience does not always know what he's referring to, or that it's me that sent the message. Which is fine by me. I was just trying to talk, not trying to say, look at me, I'm so cool because I'm talking to Jocko. That was never the point. I need to fix problems, that's all. The faster I can get him to pay attention to the problem I am trying to discuss, the faster I can solve it, and it can stop hurting people. But anyways, he is obfuscating, and when you try to get more details to clarify the situation, they refuse to answer, or they answer publicly with an answer which is completely different than what they told me, and then again refuse to follow up. They never get back to me and say, hey, sorry, it was a miscommunication, but we can definitely help you with this, or we cannot, and this is why. There's no goodwill at all. They just put me on hold for months, never get back, and then when I complain, they pretend it's my fault and I was just not patient enough. That's Jocko himself doing that stuff. I thought maybe it's just this staff not vetting requests properly at the time, but it's clearly not. After his reply, I realized it's definitely him too that's running interference and obfuscating issues and not doing due diligence. I don't think he's acting in good faith. I do have a limit. I'm no one's idiot. It looks to me like he's trying to drag things out. I despise the internet crap and the disruption it's causing everyone. I despise constantly worrying that I really need to talk to someone and warn them that something is wrong and I cannot get the message to go through. It is a nightmare, made worse by the fact that I suspect very fucked up people are behind it and they might get to the victims and do them further harm before I can get to anyone to warn and have them fix this problem. I despise that type of stuff. That's the strongest word I can come up with, but it's 100% negative to me. To have anyone drag out the situation and kick the can down the road is viciously repulsive to me, and I really resent him trying to hide behind some BS wording or excuse. If you look on Crenshaw's podcast, you'll see an episode with Jocko, and you'll see my reaction to Jocko coming and trying to twist that story. I wasn't even trying to comment on him. I was just trying to find someone else who can help out. But no offense, I'm a million times better at security and better at keeping bad guys away from my life than having people like Jocko around me would ever allow me to be. This type of shit is why people are so cautious when trying to engage with the military community. We've all heard some version of horror stories. It's the total lack of respect and care for people. My life is not his to fuck up because he had a brain fart and he feels entitled to make me accept it. He's the weakest military link in any chain I've ever seen. Interesting. At this point, both my grandmother and my grandfather would have kicked his ass for being this stupid, and they didn't agree on much. My grandfather may have not minded the inappropriate jokes and some of the more sexist topics, but he would have definitely minded the whoring out of military values to his extent. You're not there to empathize with the enemy, especially not that kind of enemy. Like, what the hell? I have no clue where Jocko gets his garbage from at all, but it is not me. I kind of still think Jocko is purposefully trying to troll the world with this garbage. My grandmother would have torn his head off for both the bad language and the stupid thinking and affiliations with the bad guys. He's just a walking disaster with this stuff. I don't even know how to compute the disaster most days. I know generations of family trees. Seriously, what the hell? Are we sure he did not acquire new brain damage since circa 2019? Because I saw his interviews when he was just starting out, and he was nothing like this. So clearly, something dumbstruck him with a severe vial of retardation in the meantime. Interesting. But please don't think I don't know how to get the attention of the big deals or don't know how to add in facts and references. I've always done that. I did that before this was ever a thing which people talked about. I have decent instincts, and I have spoken to politicians before, with experts and with university professors, the whole shebang. I would have done it faster if there was less interference too. I was always about 99% sure that the best way to get Jocko's attention was to pick a fight. I just had to try to be polite because that's how the world works nowadays. But it was the fight tone that really got his attention. I was right. It's just hard to bridge the gap between military and non-military speak when there's when there's so much division between the groups of so much partisanship. If I lean more into the military speak, I lose the rest of the audience. If I don't lean into it enough, I lose the grunt audience. It would be nice if people tried to come together a bit instead of looking for stuff to nitpick. Wow. Okay, Andra. The best thing I can say is this, because I've been guilty of it myself. And I've had negative reactions and negative interactions as a result. Take it from me, there's a way to go about it and there's a way not to go about it, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just giving you some advice. I won't go into specifics, but what I will say is this. You clearly have a topic or a subject or a multitude of subjects that are very near and dear to your heart. So much so that it's personal. So much so that it's emotional. None of that is wrong. None of that makes you wrong. None of that gives you character flaws. It just means that you have a very, very emotional attachment to whatever it is you're talking about. And from my perspective, I'm not 100% clear on what it is you're talking about, because I feel like you're being very, very protective of yourself, which you have your reasons for that. However, the problem is, and I had to learn this myself, not everybody is going to share your enthusiasm. And depending on your initial engagement, it can turn people off. And I mistakenly did that. That was not my intent. That was not my desire. That was not what I wanted to do. However, I unfortunately turned some people off with my passion. And it had a cascading effect. So as an adult, I would want to tell you to, step back a minute, take a breather, relax. Let me reach out to some people and see if they want to bite. But you also have to remember, if you're anything like I was, when you're that passionate about something, I was guilty of speaking at 1,000,000 words a minute, tons and tons of enthusiasm, and speaking as though everybody was on the same sheet of music as me, and that wasn't the case. What I'm getting out of this is you're very, very passionate about what it is you're trying to do, and you may be without knowing it, without realizing it, you may be pressing people too hard, whether they're the right people or the wrong people. You may be pressing them too hard, on top of which it may not be an area that they're overly concerned with. I'll admit, I don't think Jocko is overly concerned with whatever it is you're passionate about. I think his head's in a totally different direction. Dan Crenshaw may or may not, but I don't think he shares your enthusiasm. And I think he's trying right now to draw focus and represent issues that are facing his congressional district. If you can somehow frame it that way, or if you can find evidence and resources that affect his congressional district, that may get to him better and faster. But I feel like until we can speak privately, there's a lot I'm not tracking and have not been tracking. More comments. Might is right. In the Middle East, it is a cultural thing, but it has specific institutionalized roots which support it, and history. The best way to think of it is how there are still cannibal tribes somewhere in the jungle. I find you can try to make them vegetarians, but it is so embedded in who they are that they cry cultural discrimination if you spent the time to teach them that cultural heritage is a right which democracies typically protect. So it's best not to try to go that route. A more philosophical question is, can the Middle East be made into a democracy, which unfortunately the U.S. spent far too much time and money trying to do? My answer to that is sure, maybe, over a period of a few thousand years, if you can maintain control of it for that long and apply constant pressure to that area to progress that way. Over a period of 20 years, fuck no. You're 100% wasting money. If you flushed it down the toilet, it might actually be better in the long run. So, is it possible theoretically? Yes. Was it possible the way you tried it? No. We tried it. Side note, I honestly hate hearing military vets talk about how their Middle East strategy was paying bad guys from the Middle East to stop shooting at us and shoot at the other group of people. Instead, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and it keeps coming up. We definitely need to debate strategies so you all stop using such dumb ones. We really should, of course. We really should. Of course, they're going to take that money and immediately stab you in the back. Of course. Are you surprised when cobras hiss and then try to bite you? No. Because again, that's super well documented behavior, and it feels like no one should be surprised. Andra, keep in mind, I wasn't the decision maker. I was the decision follower, decision enforcer. And trust me, I don't think I was ever in a position to pay any, well, with the exception of Afghanistan where we made payments, it was never my job to make payments. So my 3 deployments to Iraq, we were there to specifically try to kill bad guys and preserve peace and protect innocent lives. Whoever was innocent. I'm still not convinced there were innocent people. The Greeks tried to democratize the Middle East for hundreds of years, and all that happened is that democracies fell into tyranny and crumbled, and the Middle East emerged as far more tyrannical, better educated, terrorism empire out of the wreckage of Rome. Why do you guys think all of the terrorist gangs keep trying to associate the US with the Greeks and the Roman Empire? Because they're using the exact same tricks now to get you guys to lose. That's why. No, they don't need to be literate to know the same tricks. It's primarily word of mouth. They can be 100% illiterate and still know the tricks which worked against the Greeks. The majority of the Middle East is not super literate. Some of them believe it's a sign against God to be able to read. They're illiterate on purpose. They don't need to be illiterate though, because they got a handful of tricks which always works. It's in the culture. Everyone knows the tricks. But terrorism exporting got stronger, not weaker. After the Greeks and Romans left and those Western forces imploded and crumbled, y'all are nuts to try for the same shit again, and in such a half-ass way too. 20-some years. Please. The Middle East needs to decide on its own to start having separation of church and state. That's not something you can infuse via construction projects. You know what the rest of the world learned after hundreds of years of trying to fight the Middle East empires? To never ever do what you guys tried to do. And by that I mean Central Europe primarily, because the desert people did not get on magical boats to go to the islands of the UK. No, they terrorized Central Europe primarily, which they could get to via horse. I'm sure they did have more hippie bleeding hearts in those areas too. They just never made it because they got slaughtered by the enemy hordes. So, you know, learn from history. I don't get what people don't get. It's odd to see people keep stumbling on the same tricks, especially military people. You all should know by now that the tricks are, do they seriously not teach you history in the military? I'm genuinely curious. They're not even shy about it. They literally bragging about it on TV, and you're all still confused. So Andra, try to keep in mind, elected politicians, some of which never served a day in the military, are the ones that often make policy. And then of course people that get appointed to positions like Secretary of Defense, so on and so forth, they're the ones that usually handle strategies and whatnot on behalf of the president, and they work directly with the service chiefs. So whoever's in charge of the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Space Force, and basically tell them exactly what to do. Those of us on the ground are executing strategies that are coming from people who think that they know better in the DC area. I'd like to think that they're trying their level best, that they're actually doing their level best. Whether they get it right or wrong, that they're actually trying their level best. From my perspective, just a dumb grunt on the ground, I can't disagree with a lot of what you're saying, because what I saw was, yeah, might is right. From my first degree in Homeland Security, studying terrorism and on all levels, which had a heavy focus on Islamic terrorism, what I learned was Muhammad being a Middle Easterner and understanding the patriarchal culture of the Middle East. In my humble opinion, not being a very religious person myself, and I've got my issues with religion, he basically created Islam out of thin air to basically match the culture of the Middle East with a blending of a little bit of Judaism and a little bit of Christianity, and then you throw in a whole lot of Middle Eastern culture, and then boom, you get Islam. Because Islam is very patriarchal. Islam suits men better than women. I mean, and I've always had issues with religions to begin with. That being said, Muhammad understood you cannot fuck with the culture. You cannot mess with the culture. So you had to work with the culture. And to your point, trying to teach cannibalisms that have been cannibals for centuries to be vegans, yeah, trying to convince the Middle East that has had this cultural mentality to try something different, it has to come from within. And I think right now, internally, they don't want it. They're just too culturally bedded. And, because of how patriarchal it is, you would basically, I hate to say this, but you'd have to have the male society succumb to a little bit of feminism. And I just don't see it happening. The way that they treat women and the way that women accept their treatment, the women would have to basically fight back and be allowed to fight back, and I just don't see it happening. It would need a cultural revolution that I just don't see happening without some massive event like a pandemic level event that could severely distort the population of the Middle East to where they could have a cultural shift. And again, Andra, you don't need TikTok. I don't have TikTok either. Is there an email I should use, which you do have? I think I asked before, but I don't think I received an answer unless I missed it. No, first time you asked, I gave it to you. dpb0369@gmail. For the cybersecurity stuff, I try not to comment too much openly because, one, a lot of it is boring jargon. Two, some of this stuff may take time to implement, and it's probably better not to give cyber criminals a heads up ahead of time. And three, some of it is stuff which needs some development, and I'm 100% sure it would take time to get to the point where people can use it and it's fully functional. So in my view, I don't mind keeping that information offline and limiting the amount of comments I send. I know no one is worried about me commenting too much, laugh out loud, but in all honesty, I'm used to argumentative essays, and a lot of times it ends up being that format. It would be a lot easier if we were actually speaking in real time. My sarcasm gets lost a lot sometimes when it's just someone reading out the comments. I get that 100%. I got you 100%. Laugh out loud. You probably think this is a lot of writing, but you have not seen my actual applications, thesis, and essays. This is technically nothing. Plus, there's a bonus to my ridiculously long commentary, which is that assuming any bad guys are trying to spy on this conversation, can you really imagine how long it would take them to decipher what I'm actually trying to say? Laughing my ass off. It's comments, camouflage, laugh out loud. New topics. I contributed the We Made Jocko Ugly Cry t-shirts project. Or I contributed to, okay. What if every time there was internet beef, we had limited time merch to commemorate those key moments in the internet fights saga? I think it would irk him that he's no longer the only one cashing in on his dysfunction. Rolling on the floor laughing. Yeah, I'm old. I read that stuff out loud. And we can also add as a topic, would anyone want to see Navy SEALs or any military grunts really trying and failing to fight ARBI, which is short for Awesome Ass-Kicking Robot. I think I can beat DARPA's robot dog concept, which was fooled by Marines walking like a fir tree. I laughed very hard at that story. What if we 3D printed that robot? Hee hee. Credit for the inspiration for both of these ideas goes to Fat Electrician Podcast, because they told me about the DARPA fir tree story, and I immediately wished they had a t-shirt with that story. And then Andra responded to yourself. Reference for cybersecurity incidences, which I mentioned prior. Spies are breaking onto military posts 3 times a week. Angry Cops YouTube channel. This was apparently on Fox News, but I cannot for the life of me find the original Fox News video on it. Snippets of it are in the Angry Cops video, though he's pretty funny. Laugh out loud. This is the most you'll ever laugh while watching anything cybersecurity related. Toronto police lay 102 charges in credit fraud investigations. Investigators believe there may be more victims of scheme that resulted in roughly $4 million in losses. CBC News posted April 29, 2024. This dates back a few years, but they just finalized the investigation for it. If you look up Cybercrimes Toronto or GTA, though, there's a ton of these videos and cases. The cases typically take years to lead to charges. This news clip came out in 2024, but the case dates back to 2016. That's 8 years of investigations, during which this money is funding very fucked up crimes, including trafficking. They're still using that money to do those crimes and target victims and institutions during those 8 years. Ontario Police Department's part of the FBI-led investigation into cybercrimes, April 2023, CTV News. This one included malware too, which affected victims' devices and offered stolen identities for sale and were able to bypass multi-factor authentication. There are more cases like this, of course, but I didn't want to get too far into the weeds. These 3 clips encompass most of the issues. There are also instances of hackers stealing biometrics to then once again supposedly conduct more advanced fraud. This has been a major problem in recent years because everyone just jumped to using biometrics without closing off the structural loopholes which allow hackers to break in. So that's like putting all your gold onto a sinking boat. This part goes back to the clip 1. They're still harping on the biometric stuff, but we really need to realize that the problem is in the fraud. You cannot use the same information to track bad guys and try to arrest them when they can hack in and compromise that information simultaneously. Biometrics cannot be altered, which is great, assuming no one can steal them and use them for credentialing stuff. Otherwise, it's a fraud nightmare which keeps on giving. I can go change my card, and if I think someone has stolen it, but I cannot change my biometrics, and the government does not always do an excellent job of safeguarding the data. So it's a bit of a two-edged blade there. Biometrics should be used lightly, basically. Using biometrics for everything is a recipe for disaster, and unfortunately, that is what's happened in recent years. So it's good that law enforcement can use it in some cases, but it's still problematic if they cannot ensure cybersecurity. All of this combines to form a bit of a criminal's paradise, to be honest, but I do believe it can be resolved. We just need to actually try to resolve the issues which have been known to exist for years. So this is what I really wanted to talk about. How to resolve the retarded Bermuda Triangle of illegality. A lot of it technological, and a lot of times policies are dependent on what technological tools actually exist. It's hard for police to tackle a problem they don't understand, and it's hard for politicians to give the police the tools they need through updated regulations, for instance, if they too do not actually understand what is happening. A lot of times they have to rely on witness testimony to describe the problems before they can really figure out the pattern of criminality. It's not enough to assume that malware can be tracked digitally. That's because new malware always has a leg up on the malware tracking programs, and in some cases it works for years before anyone catches on and realizes what's happening. Okay, I will stop there for now, but this issue is what I was really trying to talk about. If we can develop new platforms or new code or a new way to use that code to make this type of stuff obsolete, we really should, in my humble opinion, because the debates have stagnated and it's clear we need a breakthrough. This is something I felt I am not really able to get across before. I understood that the current system has holes in it which can be exploited. That's what I was trying to fix, though. It can be improved, and I believe it can be done so without pissing off each other, the privacy or the security or the police advocates. I think there's a happy middle ground we can reach. It's just about tackling the whole problem, not just parts of the problem. All the joking aside, I hope this is something we can all agree should be solved, and that people understand why I am trying so hard to talk to someone about this and can make a difference. This is why the whole extreme ownership thing had appeal to begin with. It's necessary for someone or a lot of someones to step up and try to resolve this, because the bad guys are trying to overwhelm the system with this stuff, and the more the system is overwhelmed, the longer it takes police to catch up to them, and the longer they can abuse the public for prior to being caught. I'm very happy that police is starting to catch on. It's very encouraging. Now I just need the military community to catch up too. Whew! Damn! Okay. Andra, I need to save this as a different file. Good Lord. You are not at a loss for words, are you? Sorry about that. I can't multitask for shit. That makes a little more sense to me now. Yeah, stealing biometrics, because, you know, like we've discussed before, what hackers typically do is they look for an opening where they can get access to source code. And they have all these different tricks. I won't go into those tricks right now because, Andra, I think that you're following. But essentially what a lot of people don't know too is when programmers create a program for functionality, they have to leave a door somewhere for them to get into so that they can make corrections, make repairs, make updates, okay? Hackers also look for this, and they look for ways to exploit these loopholes. No matter how you slice it, and Andra, I feel like you're tracking this as well. One thing I learned from my second degree, which was dedicated to cybersecurity, for every group of people that is dedicated to trying to create security, there is an equal and opposite group of people looking for ways to subvert security. It goes back to what was that? Not socialism. Sociology, basic conflict theory. For every group that's over here, an equal and opposite group has to form that's against them. So no matter how you slice it, there are always going to be a group of people that are always looking to subvert the best security for whatever means necessary, whether they're privateers, what have you. So you make a very valid point that, you know, we need to get better at finding strategies. The unfortunate truth is, I think no matter how hard we try, an equal and opposite group will always be trying equally as hard to subvert whatever strategies we come up with. But I don't think you're wrong. I think you do need to be heard. That being said, I got to tap out. Holy shit, 1 hour and 23 minutes. I got to tap out because it's time for me to go hit the gym. It's leg day, and I'm not looking forward to that, so I might as well, you know, get it done, right? It's like prison sex. You don't have to like it, but it's going to happen. Here's the deal. If you're still here, good God. Like I said, I will read and I will react and I will respond to your comments. Andra, I may have to start reading them beforehand so that I can acknowledge that I read them. Anyways, if I can get around to it, I will try to do something original. I will try to post some original content. I don't know. My mind's been flooded with so much other stuff. I haven't really had a chance to discuss it, but I know there's probably no shortage of it. I mean, the decline of Biden's mental health, the lawfare against Donald Trump, the Olympic Committee not letting biologically born males to participate in women's sports. I mean, I'm sure there's a plethora of things we could discuss. But for now, as promised, you leave a comment. I greatly appreciate it. I will read, I will react, and I will respond. I don't give a shit about the likes, the subscriptions, the notifications. You do what you got to do. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it to be the next Jocko. I'm not in it to be the next Joe Rogan. I selfishly use this channel to vent, and then also selfishly to see if I can generate conversation, which it looks like we're doing in some way, shape, or form. So that's it. That's me in a nutshell. And if you do leave a comment, I greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, y'all enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be safe out there. You're awesome.